The Night Israel Asked for a King, a gentle story from the book of Samuel. The night Israel asked for a king, the air over the hills felt strangely heavy. It was the kind of night when an entire nation seemed to be holding its breath, and everything was quietly, silently changing. I'd like to take you back to that moment, to a time when an old prophet, tired from many years of listening to God and guiding his people, sat beneath the fading light of evening and watched as the elders of Israel walked slowly toward his home with a request that would reshape their future. As you listen, you don't need to do anything at all. You can simply lie back, let your body sink into the bed, and let this story gently carry you. If your thoughts wander, that's all right. This is a story meant to hold you softly, even as you drift towards sleep. Samuel was old. The years had settled on his shoulders like a worn but familiar cloak. He had seen so much: victories and failures, faith and rebellion, quiet mornings of prayer and long nights of tears. Now in his later years, he sat outside his home in Ramah, watching the sky slowly deepen from soft gold to deep blue. The air was still. The hills around him were touched by the last light of day, the stones glowing softly as the sun sank behind them. Somewhere nearby, a flock of sheep moved lazily across the hillside, their bells chiming faintly in the distance. Samuel rested his hands in his lap and breathed out, long and slow. He had appointed his sons as judges over Israel, hoping they would carry on the work of justice and wisdom. But word had reached him that they were not like him, that they were taking bribes, turning judgment aside for their own gain. His heart was heavy, but tonight something else was coming. He could feel it, a quiet sense, deep inside, that the path of Israel was about to bend in a new direction. As the light lowered and the first stars began to appear, Samuel saw them, a group of elders, gray-haired, robed, moving steadily up the path toward his home. Their steps were measured, their faces serious. They were not coming with a simple question or a small complaint. They were coming with something final. Samuel rose slowly, his joints stiff but his mind alert. He greeted them with the calm respect of a man who had carried a nation's burdens for a lifetime. They bowed their heads in return. "Samuel," one of them began, his voice steady but tinged with sadness, "you are old, and your sons do not walk in your ways." The words were not unkind, but they cut deeply. "Now," the elder continued, "appoint a king to lead us, such as all the other nations have." A king. The word seemed to hang in the air between them. A king to lead them into battle. A king to judge them, to sit on a throne, to stand at the front of their armies. A king just like the nations around them. Samuel listened, and inside his heart something ached. They weren't just asking for new leadership. They were turning away from something sacred, from the invisible king who had led them out of Egypt, from the one who had split the sea, who had thundered at Sinai, who had spoken in whispers and in fire. But Samuel did not argue yet. Instead, when the elders finished, he dismissed them gently. Their figures disappeared back down the path, swallowed by the dust. Samuel turned away and walked into the quiet of the night. He found a place where he had often stood alone with God, A simple spot, perhaps under a tree or near a stone, where the ground felt familiar beneath his feet. Above him, the sky darkened fully, and a spray of stars appeared, soft and distant. Samuel bowed his head and poured out his heart. "They have asked for a king," he said softly. "It displeases me. It grieves me. They are not content with you as their king." In the stillness, God answered him. "Listen to all that the people are saying to you," came the quiet, steady sense of God's voice. "They have not rejected you. They have rejected me as their king." The words were firm, but not harsh. There was no rage, only a deep, sorrowful truth. "Warn them," God told Samuel. "Tell them what a king will do. Show them the ways of the king who will rule over them." So the next day, Samuel gathered the people together. The sun was higher now, casting warm light on their faces as they assembled. They looked up at him, waiting, expectant. Samuel spoke clearly, his voice carrying across the crowd. "You say, 'Give us a king to lead us,'" he began. He took a breath. "This is what the king who will reign over you will claim as his rights." And slowly, gently, he listed it all. "He will take your sons and appoint them for himself, for his chariots, for his horses. Some will run before his chariots. Some will be commanders of thousands, others of 50s. Some will plow his ground and reap his harvest. Some will make weapons of war. He will take your daughters to be perfumers and cooks and bakers. He will take the best of your fields and vineyards and olive groves and give them to his officials. He will take 1/10 of your grain, 1/10 of your flocks. You yourselves will become his servants." As Samuel spoke, his words did not come out in anger, but in a slow, sorrowful rhythm. A gentle warning meant to awaken, not to frighten. He told them, "When that day comes, you will cry out for relief from the king you have chosen, but the Lord will not answer you in that day." The people listened. They heard every word, but their hearts were fixed. "No," they replied, "we want a king over us. Then we will be like all the other nations, with a king to lead us and go out before us and fight our battles." A murmur of agreement moved through the crowd like a wind. The decision settled over them, firm and unshakable. Samuel's shoulders lowered slightly, as though he were carrying a new weight. He brought their reply before God, and again God answered. "Listen to them," the Lord said. "Give them a king." So Samuel dismissed the people, each to their own town. The crowd slowly scattered, shapes shrinking as they walked away across the hills. The day moved on and life continued. But something in Israel's story had shifted. Far away in the land of Benjamin, another story was quietly beginning. Saul, a tall and strong young man, had awakened that morning to a simple family problem. His father's donkeys were missing. The sun was gentle over the hills as Saul walked through the family land, scanning the horizons with steady eyes. His servant walked beside him, dust rising softly around their feet as they searched. They traveled through one region, then another, moving slowly over the landscape. Paths wound between low hills and scattered trees. Birds called out lazily from branches. Shepherds in the distance guided their flocks across the slopes. But the donkeys were nowhere to be found. Hour after hour, they walked. The land around them felt wide and open, calm and familiar. The frustration of not finding the animals mixed with the quiet weariness of a long journey. At last, Saul's strength of spirit began to give way to concern. "Come," he said to his servant, "let's go back. My father will stop thinking about the donkeys and start worrying about us." But the servant paused, thinking. "There is a man of God in this town," he said softly. "He is highly respected, and everything he says comes true. Let's go there now. Maybe he will tell us which way to take." Saul hesitated. They had little to give, almost no bread left for the journey. But the servant had a small piece of silver, enough to offer in respect. So they agreed. The path to the town rose gently before them. As they climbed the slope, the town came into view, its buildings clustered together, stone walls warmed by the afternoon light. At the foot of the town's hill, they saw young women coming out to draw water. The sound of their voices was light and gentle, mingling with the splash of water. "Is the seer here?" Saul asked them. "He is," they replied kindly. "In fact, he's ahead of you. Hurry now, he has just come to our town today because the people have a sacrifice at the high place." Following their words, Saul and his servant went up toward the town. The day before Saul came, the Lord had whispered to Samuel's heart, "About this time tomorrow, I will send you a man from the land of Benjamin. Anoint him ruler over my people Israel." So as Samuel walked through the town, his thoughts resting on this promise, he lifted his eyes and saw Saul, tall, strong, unaware that his life was about to shift in a way he could never have imagined. As Saul approached, God spoke to Samuel again within his spirit. "This is the man I spoke to you about. He will govern my people." Saul stepped closer to Samuel, not recognizing him, only seeing a stranger in the town. "Would you please tell me where the seer's house is?" Saul asked respectfully. Samuel's eyes softened. "I am the seer," he replied. "Go up ahead of me to the high place, for today you are to eat with me, and in the morning I will send you on your way and tell you all that is in your heart." He looked gently at Saul's tired face. "As for the donkeys you lost 3 days ago," Samuel added quietly, "do not worry about them. They have been found." Then he said something even more astonishing. "And to whom is all the desire of Israel turned, if not to you and your whole family line?" Saul stared at him bewildered. "Am I not a Benjamite?" he asked, "from the smallest tribe of Israel? And is not my clan the least of all the clans of the tribe of Benjamin? Why do you say such a thing to me?" Samuel did not answer directly. Instead, he led Saul and his servant to the meal prepared at the high place. They were given seats of honor in front of about 30 guests. A special portion of meat set aside beforehand was placed before Saul. Samuel watched him quietly as they ate. There was something humble in Saul's confusion, something unassuming in the way he accepted these unexpected honors. When the meal ended and the sunset faded into the blue of night, Samuel brought Saul to the roof of the house. The roof was open to the sky, the air cooler now. Stars shimmered above them, quiet and steady. There on that rooftop, perhaps under a gentle breeze, Samuel spoke with Saul. We're not told every word, but we can imagine the calm tone, the careful explanations, the hints of what was coming. Eventually, the night deepened and the town quieted. Saul lay down to sleep, unaware that by the next day he would be anointed as Israel's first king. Early the next morning, as the first light touched the horizon, Samuel called up to Saul on the roof. "Get ready," he said, "and I will send you on your way." They walked together toward the edge of the town. The streets were still and quiet, most people still inside, the day just beginning to wake. When they reached the outskirts, Samuel said to Saul, "Tell the servant to go on ahead of us." The servant obeyed, moving a little further down the path. Then Samuel and Saul stood alone. The air was cool and clear. Birdsong drifted softly from the hillsides. It was a simple, ordinary morning wrapped around an extraordinary moment. Samuel took a small flask of oil and in a gentle, deliberate motion, poured it on Saul's head. The oil ran slowly down, warm against Saul's skin, a symbol of something invisible and holy. Samuel kissed him and said, "Has not the Lord anointed you ruler over his inheritance?" He spoke calmly of the signs that would follow, small confirmations that God was truly with him. Men he would meet along the way, words they would speak, encounters that would leave no doubt that this calling was not a human idea, but a divine one. As Saul turned to leave Samuel, something quiet and powerful happened within him. God touched his heart. The day unfolded just as Samuel had said. Saul met people who spoke words that matched the prophecy. He found himself moved by the Spirit of God, changed in ways he could not fully explain. And yet, when the time came for him to stand publicly as king, his old hesitation returned. Later, when the tribes of Israel were gathered at Mizpah, Samuel presented them before the Lord. The process of selecting the king unfolded, tribe by tribe, clan by clan, until Saul, son of Kish, was chosen. But when they looked for him, he wasn't there. He was hiding among the supplies. It was such a human moment. This newly anointed man, tall and strong, yet overwhelmed, trying to disappear behind ordinary things. The Lord revealed where he was, and the people ran and brought him out. When he stood among them, he was taller than anyone else. From shoulder to head, he rose above the crowd. "Do you see the man the Lord has chosen?" Samuel said. "There is no one like him among all the people." Then the people shouted, "Long live the king!" The sound rose and fell like a wave over the assembly. But even as the air filled with their voices, some hearts remained cautious, and Saul himself carried a quiet uncertainty. For a time, life continued. Saul returned home. Not everyone accepted him, but he remained silent, letting things unfold. Then news came from a distant town, a town called Jabesh Gilead. They were under threat, not a threat we need to picture in detail, only a dark pressure, a heavy shadow over their people. Messengers came, their clothes dusty, their faces troubled. They told their story across Israel, asking for help. When the news reached the town where Saul lived, the people wept aloud. Their cries filled the air like a low, mournful wind. Saul, returning from the fields behind his oxen, heard the sound. "What is wrong with the people?" he asked. When he was told, something holy stirred within him. It was not the noisy rage of a man trying to prove himself. It was the firm, clear strength of God's Spirit filling him for the task ahead. He knew that the people must stand together. Messages were sent throughout Israel, calling the tribes to gather. From every direction, men assembled, coming like streams of water converging into a single river. We don't need to follow every detail of the coming conflict. We can imagine the deep night before it, the soft murmurs of men preparing their hearts, the pale light of dawn stretching across the fields. The battle itself can remain distant, quiet, hazy, something that passes like a shadow behind a thin curtain. What matters is the outcome, deliverance, relief. The people of Jabesh-Gilead were saved. The heavy threat that had hung over them was lifted like fog rising off a valley as the sun warms the earth. In the joy that followed, some wanted to lash out at those who had doubted Saul before. But Saul refused to make this a day of vengeance. "No one will be put to death today," he said gently, "for this day the Lord has rescued Israel." The focus was not on Saul's greatness, but on God's kindness. Samuel saw that this moment, full of unity and gratitude, was the right time to confirm the kingship in a deeper way. "Come," he said to the people, "let us go to Gilgal and there renew the kingship." So they all went to Gilgal. The journey there might have been peaceful, people walking together, voices low and content, the land stretching wide and familiar around them. In Gilgal, they sacrificed fellowship offerings before the Lord. There, in that place of worship and renewal, Saul was confirmed as king in the presence of the Lord. The day was filled with joy. The people rejoiced, hearts light after the relief of deliverance. Laughter and gratitude mingled in the air, like the scent of offerings rising on a gentle breeze. When the celebrations had calmed and the days had passed, Samuel knew another moment had come, a quieter one, a more solemn one. He gathered the people once more, this time not to anoint or to crown, but to speak from his heart. The assembly stood before him. They knew he was old now. They knew a change had been sealed. Samuel addressed them with the steady calm of a man who had lived honestly before God. "Here I stand," he said. "I have led you from my youth until this day." He invited them to speak if he had ever wronged them, if he had ever taken anyone's ox or donkey, if he had cheated or oppressed anyone, if he had accepted a bribe to influence judgment. They answered that he had done none of those things. Samuel's conscience was clear, and their words confirmed it. Then he began to tell the story of God's faithfulness. He reminded them of how the Lord had brought their ancestors out of Egypt, how, whenever they had forgotten God and turned aside, they had experienced trouble and oppression. But when they cried out, God had always sent deliverers. Always. Samuel's voice might have softened here, turning reflective, almost like a gentle father speaking to his grown children. He reminded them, "Now you have said, 'Give us a king to rule over us,' even though the Lord your God was your king." Yet even so, God had given them what they asked for. Samuel told them, "If you fear the Lord and serve him and obey his voice, and if both you and the king who reigns over you follow the Lord your God, it will go well." He did not threaten. He simply laid before them a quiet, unchanging truth. To confirm the seriousness of his words, Samuel prayed and asked the Lord to send a sign, even though it was the season of the wheat harvest, a time when thunder and rain were not expected. The Lord answered. Thunder rumbled across the sky. Rain began to fall, soft and unexpected, drops touching the dry earth, darkening the dust. The people were filled with a deep, trembling awareness of how real God was, how present, how powerful. They turned to Samuel and said, "Pray to the Lord your God for your servants, so that we will not die, for we have added to all our other sins the evil of asking for a king." Samuel looked at them, not in anger, but with compassion. "Do not be afraid," he said gently. "You have done all this evil, yet do not turn away from the Lord, but serve the Lord with all your heart." He gave them a quiet promise. For the sake of his great name, the Lord will not reject his people, because it has pleased the Lord to make you his own. Samuel also shared his own commitment. "As for me," he said softly, "far be it from me that I should sin against the Lord by failing to pray for you, and I will teach you the way that is good and right." The message was simple, tender, and enduring. Even when you have made mistakes, even when you have chosen poorly, God does not abandon his people. Return to him, serve him, trust him. There, under the open sky, with the scent of rain in the air, a new chapter in Israel's story settled into place. They had their king. They had heard the truth. They had been reminded of mercy. The day slowly faded. The people drifted back to their towns and homes, their footsteps quiet on the soft, damp earth. Samuel, old and faithful, perhaps watched them go one last time as their shepherd. Saul, the new king, walked into a future he did not fully understand, carrying both the weight of his crown and the gentle echo of Samuel's words. And over them all, unseen but constant, their true king watched and waited, patient, merciful, unchanging. As you rest now, you can let this story settle gently over your mind. A people at a crossroads, an old prophet who never stopped praying for them, a young king unsure but chosen, and above all, a God who does not abandon those he has made his own. You don't need to hold on to every detail. You don't need to remember every name. You can simply let the images grow softer, the hills of Israel fading into twilight, the murmuring crowds dissolving into the hush of evening, the sound of distant rain quieting the earth. Let your breath flow gently in and out. Let your body grow heavier, more relaxed, more at ease. The story has been told. The night is calm. You're safe. And as sleep comes closer, you can drift slowly and peacefully into rest.